Hello, and welcome to another episode of The End of the Search. So the topic today is, do relationships can teach us anything? Well, we're going to address that a little differently here. First of all, there's no such thing as relationships in a true sense, because the only relation or relationship is with the self, and the self is not separate. The self is. So technically speaking, there's no relationship with the self. It's not that there's a me relating with the self. It's that I am the self. In other words, I am. And these videos are pointing to that recognition, which is not a relationship. Now, every seeming relationship with seeming others, in reality, is not that can teach us anything. It simply corroborates the belief that I am a separate entity. So technically speaking, all relationships simply serve to corroborate that belief. And when we're trying to seek those relationships, what we're trying to do is to imitate somehow, is kind of a cheap imitation of the actual relationship that I have with myself, which is not a relationship. It's trying to fulfill the need, the lack that I seem to have by believing that I'm a separate entity. So if anything, all relationships are simply an opportunity to see how do I feel, where's the lack in me that I'm trying to find somewhere else. So if you talk about, let's say, the romantic kind, for example, when you say, I need you, I desire you, I want you, all we're doing there is trying to find in that seeming other what I feel it's lacking in me. But the only reason that I feel that there's something lacking in me is because I have forgotten who I am, meaning that the recognition that I am is completely overlooked, and from that place of scarcity, now I want someone, I need someone, I desire someone, you see? But when I know who I am, it's not that I cannot relate with seeming another one, it's that now I don't need that person, I don't want that person, I don't desire that person or that object, or what you want to call it. I love that. See the difference? Because love is an expression, it's an extension of what I am. And love is not, doesn't need, want, or desire anything, because love is all there is, you see? So technically speaking, when we talk about relationships and we think in terms that they can teach us something, well, we can look at it this way. When I believe that I'm a separate entity, obviously all the fear that is in there is going to be projected onto something else. So if anything, what any relationship, meaning any kind of division in here, in this world of appearances with seeming another, can teach me, how am I seeing myself? If there's anger in me and I'm angry at someone, in reality, I am not angry at anyone. I am just noting that the energy that is in me, and I need a mirror, something where I can project it onto to believe that I am innocent, that this anger is caused by something else. But in reality, all of that is corroborating the cause, the belief that says I am a separate entity. Without being a separate entity, then whatever energy that seems to be moved is just that, but cannot be projected onto anything, you see? Consequently, I don't feel there's no separation. All that there is simply what is. In the world of appearances, we perceive separation, but we can live in the world of appearances with a mentality that is not feeding that sense of separation. So when we are inviting here, what happens if you don't believe the content of the mind is because the only thing that creates this illusory veil of separation is a thought. Only a thought. When I see another, I'm not seeing another, I'm seeing a thought that is interpreting, and then that thought is the one that says there is another. But without that interpretation, there's not an other, there's just beingness, there's just me. That's why the example is with a baby. The baby perception seems to be happening, but the baby doesn't know how to, meaning not differentiate, but not only that, doesn't know how to separate. The baby does not experience himself or herself as separate from anything else. All is part of it. You see? The moment it believes the concept I as a separate entity, as a sense of I am this individual because a thought is telling me that, now I think that I'm separate from everything else. And what creates that seeming believing separation is a thought. I shared this example before, and it's that when I was in the hospital because they did a procedure, just an outpatient procedure, but they needed to put me on anesthesia. When I got out of the anesthesia, perception was taking place because obviously somebody was holding my hand and looking at what's happening, but I could not name or label anything because I was still in that space where it's just being, so to speak, right? And then when the mind, when the brain began to engage, is when little by little I began to recognize. You see, oh, okay, and then the mind goes, oh, that person is my friend and whatever. Oh, I am in a hospital bed. All that stuff was happening little by little, but prior to that, all that it was is just what is, you see? So, when you are or not you personally, but again, that's a limitation of language. When there's an identification with the beingness that I am, what you experience is wholeness. And consequently, you don't find yourself wanting, needing, or necessarily desiring anything that you think is going to add to that. You simply see life unfolding and you are just being. And in the beingness, you notice how life moves you in a particular direction, but there's not the need or the desire to pursue anything, thinking that I'm going to derive anything from there. You simply observe life happening. And all sorts of thoughts can cross consciousness, and that's fine. All sorts of appearances, but somehow you rest in that, you rest in what is. And this invitation is what we do on these videos all the time. I said we, but in reality it's what is being done through this instrument, through this me. The invitation here is not complicated. The invitation here is right now, if you don't believe the content of the mind, remembering that these videos are paradoxical. It's not that you're going to choose to do that. This is just a seeming happening when in the play appears that there's a me telling a seeming you, this suggesting not to believe the content of the mind. So that's fine. Act as if you seem that you could actually do that, okay? So, if you don't believe the content of the mind, if you don't believe any thoughts, which is the cause of all separation, what remains? And you see, what remains is what is. And there's no relationship there. And now the way you relate with seeming others, it comes from that space. Once that recognition is established, then once again, now you are relating, so to speak, with everything, but in reality you're always relating with yourself because it's only you. And we're pointing to that you, which is non-conceptual. It's not something you can understand. No one can understand this because this is not an understandable thing. It's what is. Right now you are. Can you say you're not? You see? This is what this is all pointing to. And now that you're resting in that, just observe how life unfolds. And of course, because we believe to be this separate entity, now in this sense, relationships, meaning the seeming appearances, help us see how I still believing this sense of a me as a separate entity. And in that sense, well, you can say that relationships can teach us something, but it's teaching you the same thing. It doesn't matter how the form or the shape or the behavior or the feelings that may conjure up. It's the same lesson. It doesn't change. If I believe I'm a separate entity, well, there's a display of possibilities into how I feel, who I blame, all whatever. But when there's a recognition that I am, then that is where we're pointing to here. And in the I am, just observe life unfolding. You see? And that doesn't mean that if you become conscious, then you will not be able to have relationships of the let's say the romantic kind or any kind of those relationship with family or friends. No, that'll continue the same, but the way you relate with that is going to be very different, because the sense of lack, the neediness, the wanting, the all that stuff drops immediately because you're already present, you're fulfilled. So when the relationship, meaning when the appearance shows up in your life that takes the form of a relationship with a family member or a friend or co-worker, you treat them the way you treat yourself, because you know that you're always relating with yourself, because it's only one. See, that's the key. Now if you're in a relationship of the, let's say, the romantic kind, and let's say that, or anyone, it doesn't matter what kind of relationship, and if you're conscious of this, and let's say within the world of appearances you're simply being, and the quote-unquote other is very identified with the ego thought system, meaning with the identity of a person or so, well, it wouldn't make any sense to remain in a space where there's no communication in that sense. Somebody once says that Jesus loved everybody just the same, but that doesn't mean he invited everybody home for dinner. You see? So yeah, you will love everybody just the same because everyone is you, and doesn't mean that you have to invite everybody home, because everybody has their journey that they're supposed to travel, and they have to deal with whatever conditioning they have to deal with. But the love that you are is extended to everything, because in the end it's only extended to yourself, and love is unconditional. Love is all-encompassing. Love is all-accepting, because it is. And there's no relationship there. Because once again, relationships have to do with two. But there's no two. There's only beingness, and you are. Well, once again, these videos are pointing to that recognition. That how your life will unfold, I don't know, that's a mystery. But when there's a recognition that I am, you rest in the I am, which is also known as the peace that surpasses all understanding. It's not the same thing, because the peace that surpasses all understanding is a consequence. The I am is what is, and that's something we cannot talk about. It simply is. Right now, if you don't believe any thoughts, what remains? You don't need to answer, but that's what we're pointing to. And well, this is the inspiration that came through. I hope it served. And as always, may peace permeate the mind so that love can be extended.